Dan Bongino just recently suggested that Epstein was an intelligence asset for people in the Middle East. We do know about this recently. He said, obviously, I don't know which country, though. It could be our greatest ally. Would it not be? Remember this clip?
About a year and a half after that, I'm in a green room at Fox, and I'm not going to say who because they didn't give me permission to share it, but the short story, but I don't know who they are. It says, Epstein's an intelligence asset for people in the Middle East, right? I'm like, no, I didn't know that. I'm like, you sure of that? The person, let's say, is like, I'm absolutely sure of that he's either a witting or unwitting asset, intelligence asset, meaning his plane and that island, the cameras, there's a big assumption out there that these videotapes were exclusively in the custody of Epstein. That's a huge mistake. The reason they wanted this story to go away is because there's an assumption like, oh yeah, Epstein had him. No, he wasn't the only one who had him, according to this source. These assets, that's why this blackmail story makes so much sense. Which Middle Eastern countries they are, I don't know. But this person, who's a very, very good reporter, I mean, aces, right, swore Epstein was either a witting or unwitting intelligence asset, and they may have had his plane wired up, and they're the ones who have all this stuff. So the point is, to sum it up, how do you know some of these countries aren't going to some of these power players who aren't making decisions? Because, hey, you wouldn't want this video out there, right? How do you know?
100%.
I mean,
let's get
all right, let's talk about this. So
the interesting about the videos too is because you have Pam Bondi, who recently was recorded undercover. They had like a little thing that they had with her.
Oh yeah.
And she was talking about how there's like tens and thousands of videos that that they have to comb through, and there's so much stuff they have to go through. And then you have Kash Patel come on, I think it was like Joe Rogan or something. And the second he goes on Joe Rogan, he's like, oh, there's no videos of people with children. There's nothing like that.
Okay, wait, hold on. So this is another the devil's in the details moment. So I look back and analyze exactly what she said and how she said that and what Kash said. And what she said is there was tens of thousands of videos with Epstein, and that's it, committing crimes against children.
So you think it's only Epstein in the videos, that there's no other?
What she said is that the videos that they currently have, though, they only involve Epstein. She did not say that they involve the co-conspirators. So then Kash was asked if they had videos of Epstein with his co-conspirators, and he said no, and then strongly implied that they could have been all destroyed. So that's what that was. So, if you look at exactly how they say it, they weren't actually in contradiction.
Because I was going to ask that question, because I know a lot of people online, we're sort of getting to the stage where our mindset is they probably don't have anything anymore. And so they're leading us along with, oh, well, it might happen, it might not happen. But if they really had the stuff, the hope is that they would have just released it. So what do you think? Do they have it or no? Well,
I don't think that they've lost necessarily everything, and maybe the FBI doesn't have it. What we do know is that when the New York home was raided, they gave Epstein's people a couple days before they handed over the tape. So, hello. So, who knows if the FBI even got the blackmail tapes? Maybe they just got the tapes, that implicated Epstein in that raid, right? Now, when the raid happened in his Palm Beach Island home, there was reportedly a man that was handed over the actual blackmail tapes of the co-conspirators, and no one talks about this, but he was reportedly handed the blackmail tapes of some of the co-conspirators and or clients, right? And the reason why he was handed this from one of the Palm Beach police officers or deputy sheriff, something like that, is because they believed that this whole thing was going to get covered up. This guy reportedly, allegedly, took the tapes and then fled to Russia. And where my mind is going is if he has the tapes and is taking them because he believes that this is going to be covered up and he flees to Russia, I wouldn't be surprised if Russia's intelligence now has those tapes as well.
That wouldn't be good.
No.
Well, it depends on what your opinion of Putin is. But also, I do believe that there are other agencies in our government that would for sure have at least some of those tapes, the NSA, the CIA, and then, of course, Mossad, right? So maybe the FBI doesn't have any of them. Maybe Pam was telling the truth, but I do believe that there's tapes. And And I do believe there probably were copies, and there could be other individuals that have these tapes, you know. So I don't think that all hope is lost. I think that the evidence is still there. I think multiple countries have the tapes. I think that multiple intelligence agencies have the tapes. And I think there's individuals like this guy that was allegedly handed the tapes from someone that worked from the Palm Beach, you know, police department. And this was years ago. So I do believe the evidence is still there, at least enough to take down many of the
But what
co-conspirators'
evidence?
claims.
Because why
Well, the
I get-
tapes would be pretty big evidence.
Yeah, like, so are we talking about like actual penetrative action with minors? Like, is that what the tapes are? It's
Yes.
Like,
yes, absolutely. And that's another thing that the mainstream media downplays is that so, you know, when Jeffrey Epstein got arrested, if you watch any of the documentaries, the mainstream ones on Jeffrey Epstein, they make it appear that Jeffrey Epstein, you know, was sex trafficking and or raping, you know, barely legal teenagers. And that is true, but they leave out a lot of the story. And a lot of the story is that he was also raping children, and so were the clients and co-conspirators. They don't talk about the younger victims, the younger survivors, right? And there was so much more going on in the island, but you know, it wasn't just that. And then of course, it was a blackmail operation. Like the bigger part of the operation, of the sex trafficking operation, was blackmail, just like in the same hallmarks of Diddy's ring. That was ultimately a blackmail operation as well. And so, you know, so it was a blackmail operation, and Jeffrey Epstein used to brag to people, his friends, that, you know, that he was running a blackmail operation. And when he got Prince Andrew, he's like, this is the Super Bowl trophy. Like, this is the biggest win to get, you know, someone like Prince Andrew blackmailed. And, you know, this was years ago. And as we all know now, like, Prince Andrew clearly was involved. So.
well, this is what I want to ask you though, because you said it could be good or bad, depending on what you think of Putin. I have good opinions of Putin comparatively. If you look at in comparison to our own government, I would say, you know, at least he seems to somewhat care about preserving his own culture. So while I also think maybe he's a little more blatant in his censorship, and he's a little more blatant outright in the way that he would just, you know, use the government to restrict people, and kill people too, by the way. My neighbor's dad was killed by Putin. That's why they're here. So, I mean, I'm not claiming he's some sort of like, you know, Nobel Peace Prize winner. But that's Obama, right? He didn't start enough wars to become that. But I would say the ability for our politicians and people to be blackmailed is what does bother me, because, you know, I never had any issues like that where people try to blackmail me, but I had people in the past, you know, be like, well, I'm going to tell people this publicly. If you don't, you know, basically you need to just like step out of the scene. And they were mad about, you know, my views on women, my views on what was going on with Israel at my old company. And I just said, go ahead and tell the public. And then they did. They're like, all right, here's this guy and whatever. And I was like, cool. It didn't do anything to me. Some people got mad for a couple of weeks, talked shit on me. And I just was like, took it on the chin and just went through it. I was like, it's not illegal. You're not accusing me of doing anything illegal. However, if I had done something illegal, I could see how that could control you, because that would be terrifying if somebody called you and was like, you know, having some gossip about you or some rumor is one thing. A legal activity is another. And I mean, if you're in the media and someone hasn't accused you of illegal activity, then you're not really in the media, right? But to actually have done it and it be on tape, I mean, that would ruin your entire life.